mean?
There we go. I have a different laptop, so. Okay, I'm ready.
It's like the Chiefs in the car.
Yeah, sorry, I had to start off getting my wife down to the infusion center this morning, so.
Are we ready? David we had to wait for David. He's got to move to a different.
Yep, he says he's ready.
Okay, on record.
All right, let me call to order the City of Lincoln City, the special City Council meeting of Friday, May 29th, 2020. It's 10 a.m. and we're on Zoom, and again, the public certainly has the opportunity to view us on Channel 4 and through the internet, through the Lincoln City website. And I'm assuming, again, comments or questions can come in through public comment at lincolncity.org. Kathy, can you either acknowledge or call a roll call, please?
Dick Anderson?
Yes.
Judy Casper?
Here.
Deanna Hinton?
Here.
Riley Hoagland?
Here.
Diane Coos?
Here.
Rick Mark?
Here.
And Mitch Parsons.
Here.
Great. We called this meeting to deal with 3 specific questions. But before we do that, I just got off a phone call. I'd like to give you an update with the county and cities and tribes, and they had some, information that they were sharing. And Ken, you may, already have this and want to join, but there were a couple of notable announcements. One, last night, the county got the criteria for phase 2. And a brief look at that would say Lincoln County doesn't qualify to meet phase 2 requirements right yet. The primary reason on that is these 2 latest cases haven't been able to be traced, and evidently that's one of the big roadblocks. The other is they're talking a lot about trying to expand the, keep Lincoln County open and the education process on that. And the noted staff were saying they didn't see that many signs and paraphernalia from the education component out this last weekend. They've distributed signs and stuff to the chambers, need to get that kind of stuff out to the businesses. Evidently, the county commissioners on Monday's meeting are going to talk about face masks and look at that kind of an issue, since that continues to be a prominent discussion. And then finally, a reminder that the unemployment rate for Lincoln County is 26%. That's from 3% in, I think, March, up to 26%. So great deal of concern there. So that's a little, and they got through Business Oregon, Ron, 120,000 came in with the counties and the cities application, including Lincoln City. So that came in. So with that, why don't we go, Ron, if you could, you put out a nice outline to help us with this discussion, and the first being kind of clarification or whatever for the lodging and the reopening that occurs on June 1st.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So I sent this to all of you this morning. I put this together earlier in the week, reviewed it with our staff, sent it to the mayor, and then sent it to everybody. What we're trying to do is to kind of hit the biggest questions that we seem to be getting. I wanted to remind you also that even though there's 3 agenda items, you can add more based upon what was printed on our agenda. The first question is probably the biggest question that we have been getting is the 24-hour rule. Often when I'm talking with the lodging industries, I say, go back and read it again, and then read it again, and read it again. For the hotels, this is a quote from the reopening plan. It states, a minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is clean and put out for rental. For STRs, short-term rentals and VRDs, it says the minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is clean and put out for rental again. So the biggest question we hear is, can we send in our cleaning crews within that 24-hour period? And the answer to that is no, you can't. It is a 24-hour, the room has to be empty of everybody before somebody can go in, including cleaning crews. Okay, yeah. Any questions on that?
Deanna?
I don't have a question. I had just would like, can we, the city, clarify that by just striking the last from and put out for rental use? Can we, the city, strike that part?
If you want to change, this, we'd have to put it on for, Richard, I think this is the case. We'd have to put it on for another agenda where it's been rewritten, and then it becomes your document and not one that's just where we ratified the counties.
Yeah, what you did was simply ratify and approve the county's document. I think the document says what everybody on this call thinks it says. No cleaning crew can go in within 24 hours. Nobody's in there. I think it says that. I don't really think it needs clarification. I think our educational materials we send to the VRD owners and the hotels can inform them, that no one can enter. But I don't really think it needs to be amended. I did reach out to the county attorney. He has not gotten back to me about it, but I thought the language was fairly clear.
It's not. I'm getting comments and that it's not. The last bit of the sentence makes it confusing, because if you read it again, it just seems like somebody can check in within that 24 hours, and it is confusing, and it's not, I don't know, I think it needs to be amended.
If the council wants to put it on an agenda to be amended, we could do that, but I think it's enforceable the way it is.
Riley, you have a question? You're on mute. There you go. Oops. You're still on mute.
Gotta click it the right way. All right, so which brings up to the point of Richard just said about enforcement. There's a lot of these workers are not comfortable speaking up and out. They want their job and they want to be safe. And a lot of them that I've been in contact with are just fearful that the second they say that rooms are being rented, they'll know who was there to which house, and that they'll lose their job. And they also don't want to, become exposed that way. I'm not in favor of changing the ordinance. I think it's very clear that it says before and after the cleaning. And, I want to see somehow we as the city say, look, we're everybody knows we have 7 compliance thing. I want to step up our enforcement and protect these people that are there. So how can we convey that, look, this is what we want to do?
Okay, so
If we
why don't we
can,
Why don't we first deal with, rather than jumping to enforcement, let's get back to this. Deanna asked the question and was making a suggestion of, trying to change something. Riley, what I understand you saying is it's clear. And Ron, did you want to jump in on something?
No, that's fine.
Anne Marie, you must be getting some of these calls. Is that?
Yes, I've received a number of them. And so I agree with Councillor Hinton in that it is not clear, because if it was clear, people wouldn't be calling and asking. And frankly, I didn't think it was clear. I personally have told people that the 24-hour hold only applies to between rentals. So I didn't understand it myself. So there are VRD owners out there who are going to be just doing 24 hours based upon what I told them.
So again, I guess I'm confused because by reading it, how do you, when you read this, between checkout and the time the room is cleaned, that says,
and put out for rental again.
Yeah.
And there's two ands. There's
right.
an and sandwich, cleaning and sandwich.
So I
misread it.
Okay.
Obviously, I misread it, but that means it needs to be worded better. It wasn't worded enough to be clear to everyone. Otherwise, I wouldn't have misread it and we wouldn't be receiving phone calls. I'm just saying that I agree with Councillor Hinton.
Okay. So, Deanna, you might as well take you off.
Sorry. If we just put a period after the room is cleaned, then there would be no confusion. It's that minimal time of 24 hours to allow, if there is a virus in there, to allow it hopefully to dissipate. But we know that on the harder surfaces it doesn't, but at least that allows it not to be airborne at that point.
No, we understand that. So I guess Ron, and maybe it's Ed as well, as just out of curiosity, how would someone, rather than having to wait for another meeting, why can't some kind of explanation go out to the same businesses that we sent this out to originally as kind of a follow-up? And that way we don't have to go through the motions of changing things. We're just giving, there seems to be some confusion. Here's what it says. And if to Deanna's point, there's some question, we go into a little more detail. Is something like that feasible?
Yeah, we have a lodging email list. We could blast it out to that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, part of this outline that I have, Ed will be talking a little bit more about education, and that would be a critical component of it. What I find when I talk with the lodging industries, whether they understand it or they don't understand it, what they do understand is the impact of waiting 24 hours.
Right.
And so I think they're just asking to ask because of the how it can harm their revenues. Mm-hmm. And so whether they get it or not, I think they're going to continue to ask.
I would agree. Rick, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. I want to say I'm puzzled by how anyone could misread what's said here, because it's perfectly clear to me, but evidently people are. I have another suggestion rather than Councillor Hinton's. I don't think the period after cleaned helps the problem, but what if you just added the word then, and then put out for rental again? Would that help show that the room has, I want to say everybody knows that the room has to be cleaned before it's put out for rental again, and that's fairly obvious to me, but maybe that would help underscore that 24 hours from checkout before the room is cleaned, and after the room is cleaned, then it can be rented again.
Well, and I think, Rick, those are all good suggestions and stuff. And as with Deanna, I'm trying to avoid another meeting where you have to take this action and notice it. So I'm trying to look at Ron and Richard and say, gee, can't we just do a follow-up with further explanation about this item? That way it can go out this afternoon and before June 1st. So at least they have it. Deanna.
I want to say too, is it just sounds like a practical thing here, the checkout and the time the room is clean. When actually the request was on that original phone conference with the county was before the housekeepers entered. And so it's been turned around a little bit, but the emphasis was on the protection of the workers. And I don't know if the workers will actually be informed. I mean, add the email going out to people is a wonderful thing, but how do the employees get to know that? They're the ones we're hearing from. They're the ones that are afraid of the virus. They're the ones that want to have a little level of protection from us. So is there some way that we can make sure that the cleaning crew, the housekeepers, the people who work for these businesses actually get the message as well?
Chief Paul, yeah, go ahead, Chief.
Well, I was just inquiring. So when OHA, the county and the governor put these rules out and are mandating these things, in our workplaces, there's a lot of mandatory postings as far as, employment rules and this and that and the other. And we have to have the MSD reports on hazardous materials and stuff like that. So is there nothing in these rules that's put out that these businesses have to post these guidelines on their facility in order to keep their staff informed and educated as to what the requirements are? I mean, that seems like the simplest thing is, again, that onus should be on the owners of these properties to prominently post these things so that their employees know what those rules are and how to adhere to them.
Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, so yes, the answer to that is yes. Under signage, COVID health signs at entrances and check-ins, sign templates to be provided. And those are signed templates for STRs and BRDs and bed and breakfasts, home shares as well. And those templates are made by us. So they have to be put at all entrances.
Okay.
Now, we have not made any of those specifically for this, although some of it has language, but not as specific as this, and we can easily alter those and have those put up.
So would we distribute these separately, or would this be part of their? They have to go through some kind of application process, submitting that they are prepared to meet these guidelines, and as we issue those permits or those acknowledgments and say, yeah, you're good to go, that response would be also sending them a copy of these postings?
Yeah, we've so far received over 500 plans or the applications. And yes, that's a part of it, is that the templates are already there for them to print and put out. We could easily send them an email reminding them of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's your answer.
Yep. Your Honor.
Yes.
I think that maybe what happened with the two, I mean, I don't think it's unclear. I think and means also, you also have to do this, but I understand that certain VRD owners are going to call and ask people until they get the answer they want. I think it would be better reworded as a minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is cleaned, period. The room must be clean per Oregon Health Authority standards. And Ken has sent around the circular with the technical cleaning requirements. And only after the room is clean may the room be put out for rental again. So I think in our educational materials, we can simply elaborate on that, but I don't really think if I had to cite somebody that second and is going to interfere with the prosecution. I think you both have to clean the room, you have to stay out, and you can't put it out for rental again. So no one can check in, it's cleaned, and the people that clean it can't go in for 24 hours. I think both of those ideas are there. So I think we should ask the county if they want to tweak their language in their order that we concurred with, as opposed to going out on our own. But I think our educational materials can certainly flesh it out.
Well, so I guess the question is, why can't we do both? Why can't we put out the information, clarification, reminder that what this really says and what it means? It needs to be posted so the employees and the customers see it, and also then kind of inform the county that, perhaps this is something they would want to change wording. I don't know why we have to change the wording if we give out the explanation of what it means. Ron?
Yes. Again, I've gone now off of my outline to the actual order itself. And when you look under restrictions, it's very clear. And so I think this is what we are looking at is an education process and not a change in the language. Because under restrictions, it states a minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is cleaned and put out for rental again. And then when it's under STRs, VRDs, it says a minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is cleaned and put out for rental again. And I think what Richard is talking about is actually correct. I know that the people that I've talked to are the same ones that talk to Anne Marie and the same ones that talk to somebody else. They're fishing.
Yeah. So I guess I would, I don't know if there's agreement, a motion. Okay, Deanna?
I just want to say that I think the people that Ron and Anne Marie are hearing from are probably VRD managers and owners, right? Okay, the people that I hear from are not those people. They are the other people, the people that are cleaners or someone speaking for them. So we're looking at it from two different ways, or they are. And I think my interest in this is to, like I said before, to protect the workers that are going in and actually doing the cleaning. And so I would move to amend the language to read a minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is clean, period.
I don't hear a second. Okay, so it dies of lack of second.
Okay.
Jerry, you had your hand up. Did go, Chief? You're muted.
Yes, sir. I just continue to think about the what Deanna's saying here and the protection of the workers. And I know we probably get into this in the, where we talk about whether or not there's a way to enforce this very efficiently or not. But I think part of that information that needs to be in that posting or that information that goes out. And again, maybe I am jumping ahead, and Ron's already got this covered in the stuff that goes out once these people have applied in that packet. But you know, the information that we've received gives a number of entities like OSHA. I mean, actually, OSHA is supposed to be the central repository for complaints on these things, and then they will take appropriate action based on which agency needs to focus on that particular event. But I know part of the issue that we're going to face, and Deanna and some of the folks that have received these quote unquote anonymous complaints from some of these workers expressing these concerns, is that, well, if I say something, you know, I'm going to get in trouble with my boss, or I'm going to get fired. They fear for their jobs. But there should be in that information the contact numbers for OSHA and those other places, so that they can anonymously call in and feel comfortable of reporting their own businesses if they feel that strongly about it, so that that can come up on their radar without them having to fear that there's a formal complaint where a police officer has to show up, take information, and, you know, and have date, time, location, which room, and, you know, who's filing the complaint. That kind of brings that kind of pressure on them to be reluctant to report, where they can go directly to OSHA and report these complaints. So I'm just saying that maybe that information, that contact information, we need to make sure is in that packet information on those postings.
It gets posted, yeah. Ron, you had your hand up?
Oh, no, sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Okay. That's a good suggestion, Chief. And I think you're right. Diane.
Yeah, I thought we were, okay, so I was confused with Deanna's motion because I thought we had to have a special meeting to change things. So we're really clarifying what it means. That's what I was trying to understand what people were not understanding, because it says to wait 24 hours before it cleans and then can go out and put out for rental. To me, I would have read 24 hours, then clean it, then 24 hours, then go to rental. So I was looking at it, so it ends up 48 hours, not so clarity is one, but we're doing that with the education forms, basically. Is that correct?
That was what Ron and some of the suggestions were, to put it out as explanations, further explanation of what's already written, of what it means for those who keep asking, looking for their own answer. Yes.
Okay.
Deanna went another route.
So is that something that can be posted just like we have to do when you post it for the employment, you know, posters that have to go out? Because that way, and I like that with the chief saying put OSHA's phone number on there, because so many of them do complain, because we do have unethical owners and managers who are abusing our workers. Right. So if they can do that without getting retribution, I guess, please, let's do that. So that's where I vote.
Mr. Appicello.
Yeah, trying to send you, I sent you all an email, and this is what I wrote: a minimum 24 hours hold be maintained between checkout and the time the room is cleaned. The room be cleaned per county order 5/2/136 standards and other applicable law. Only after the room is clean may the room be put out for rental again. I think we don't need to amend the order because the words are already there. If you wanted to use this as an educational, maybe Anne Marie emails this to all the VRD owners in the hotel. It just says, just for clarity, stop asking this question. This is what the language means. I'd suggest we do that.
And then that could be incorporated into a motion. Riley, you have your hand up?
Yes, would be great, like Diane was saying about putting that information on the required postings. I'm fully in favor of that. I would also like to see if in our social media platforms, we put out an infographic of saying, hey, if you or anyone else is associated with cleaning, here is the way in which to have an anonymous tip, if you will, That way it's really out there for people to see, because not everyone, not all workers are going to see the piece of paper. Not everybody's going to know. So the more it's in people's kind of collective consciousness of like, oh, here's the thing to do, then planning department and everybody else on the city level can kind of have a little space to breathe between that thing of like, hey, yes, council's doing everything they can, city is doing everything they can, and then here is this other entity that is really responsible for this kind of tracking. So I would love to see, a nice, pretty infographic in addition to the bottom of the thing, but the short-term rental market, that paper that has to go out and be posted. So,
Ron, you.
Can I have my hand up again?
Yeah, that's. Oh no,
nope, I don't. I don't. Sorry.
You're right. So, Deanna.
Okay, if what Richard sent around to us, which sounds good, if that can also be posted and in Spanish. A lot of our housekeepers, at least in the neighborhood that I live in, are Hispanic, and I don't know if they speak English or not, because I just wave at them, and that's about as far as our conversation gets, but so I think it would be helpful to have it also in Spanish and something that attracts their attention, such as what Riley was saying, that, it's quick, it's simple, it's easy, here you go, this is how we are supporting you. That, it doesn't have to say those words, but just give it to them short, sweet, and so they know. And that it's posted, so everybody, owners, managers, and especially those frontline workers have an opportunity to see it.
So
and where to go for complaints. I like that added part that Riley added.
Okay. So that the suggestion from Mr. Appicello, and he had, wording and the further suggestions of getting it out to the blasted out to the owners and property managers and getting it posted would clarify the existing position and should resolve the questions that are coming. So could we a motion to accept those kind of suggestions and move forward? Riley?
Sorry about that. Yes, I would like to make a motion to recommend to staff that we put out a infographic social media platform in all its capacity, a quick and easy, beautiful thing that shows in Spanish and in English a way in which they can anonymously state place of businesses and owners that are not in compliance, and add that to the sheet that will need to be at each business.
And to clarify
yeah, sorry.
issues.
Yes, in addition to the and the clarification that Mr. Appicello just sent out to us, citing 52136.
I second that.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, Kathy, you have that all on a recording. Mr. Hoagland likes to keep his motion short.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely refer to the recording.
Okay. All right.
That's all right.
Any further discussion?
Rick's got his hand up.
Rick, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of this. I'm just curious about the process here. Are we going to be doing this for every item on this this document that Ron sent out, or are we going to be able
Who
to?
knows? Let's take care of this one first, and then see how discussions go.
And so this means, I'm sorry, I guess my other question is, this means that we are conforming with the language that we're seeing on Ron's document, which comes from the county. So we're not really, we are not changing that language. We're just sending out an educational explanation.
Yes, a further explanation so they can't be mistaken and read their own interpretation into it. Yeah. Judy.
Yeah. Timeline, this will be done by when? Effective when? I mean, June 1st is coming up. Is this going to happen today, Monday? When?
Ed? Ken?
We'll need to talk about how we communicate this out. I mean, I can send things to our list of VRD and hotel owners and managers. That's pretty easy to do. Anne Marie has owners, so you know, we could turn around on a dime in terms of that communication. Communicating it to the workers, I'd really have to think that through. That's not something we tend to do, and I don't have a handy list for that. So, Ron, you and I will probably need to talk and figure out how that's done.
Well, we can have something that will go out to the owners by Monday at the latest. Okay. Now, beyond that, when you start talking about things to be posted, now you're moving into enforcement. So we can have this language, change it. We send it to the owners. They're supposed to post it up where their employees can read it. Now that shifts over to enforcement.
Okay. But what I hear you saying is for sure, you know, that the notice and clarification can get out to make sure the owners and property managers understand, you know, what this actually means. So yeah, that could be there prior to the June 1st date.
Yes.
And then we can keep working on making sure the workforce understands.
Yes.
Okay. Kathy, could you do a roll call for a vote?
Sure. Dick Anderson?
Yes.
Judy Casper?
Yes.
Deanna Hinton?
Yes.
Riley Hoagland?
Yes.
Diane Coos?
Yes.
Rick Mark?
Yes.
And Mitch Person?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great. Thank you. The other was that there seems to be, or it's a question, Ron and Richard, the cleaning requirements, and is that?
Yeah, there's two important parts to this. There's the document itself that lists several items on how to clean, what to clean, gloves, when you wear masks, linen to be washed, and so forth. I am going to take over your screen because the other document that's important to see is let's see, David, I need you to allow me to share the screen. Oh, crud. Anyways, so there's a link, and this is perhaps the most important link there is in all of this, and it's what is required if a guest is suspected of having the COVID-19, positive, presumptive, or symptomatic, for all lodging properties and types. And when you click on that, let's see if I can get this yet. There we go. You should now be able to see the document that says Oregon Health Authority. Yep. This is one that every one of us should be in detail familiar with, because these are the kind of questions that we'll end up getting. It talks on how to disinfect surfaces, porous versus non-porous, what percentage alcohol content should be in your cleaning products, porous versus non-porous solutions or surfaces, electronics and appliances, linens, clothing. If there's anybody who in the that they would have suspected of having the virus, this is what the hotel or lodging business has to do in order to clean. And so again, as I tell everybody, read, reread, reread, and then reread it again. Because if there's any question that comes up of what do we do if there's a suspected virus, somebody has it, and that could be an employee, it doesn't make a distinction. then this is what they have to do. Okay, and then the order itself has a minimum of what they have to do, and then the plans that we're getting that are being submitted, some of them go beyond the minimum. They're using some industry wide plans that go beyond what we're doing. Others are just saying we'll comply with the plan. And then again, whether if they're not doing that, then that moves us into the area of enforcement. That's the second biggest question that we probably get, is in the area of how do we clean.
Okay. And you've indicated that when the lodging industry has notified the city that they're going to open, they indicate what method they're going with?
Yeah, each business has to submit a plan.
Okay.
And at the last count that Courtney gave me, we've received over 500 of those plans. That kind of leads me a little bit to another question. This was a point we clarified with the county. The next question that we often heard from the businesses is, are we applying for this and we're getting your permission? Well, the county and us, we've taken the position that what you're doing is certifying that you are going to abide by this order and all the provisions of that, and that's what you need to do. And then that moves us into an enforcement. There's not a review of the plans in order to make sure it works, because quite frankly, we just don't have the manpower to get all that done by June 1st. And so it's a matter of certifying that you're going to meet the minimum plans and the plans that you submit. And then that's what Richard will use, and the chief will use if there's any further action that's needed.
Okay.
Let's see, Richard, did you want to add anything into this?
You're muted.
Not on cleaning.
Okay.
Okay.
You have masks under the cleaning aspect on your outline. Is there?
Yeah, and so as it pertains to the masks, we generally are getting, well, there's two provisions with it. The first is masks for employees. Employees are required to wear masks whenever they're dealing with the public. So in all public areas, in any kind of dealing they have with the public, they're required to wear masks. The other provision is that they're also required to inform and to recommend to their tenants or their renters that they should wear masks whenever they're out in the public. So anytime they leave the hotel, they should wear masks, and that's part of this order is requiring them to do that.
Okay. So now let's talk about enforcement of these kind of things.
Yeah, there's really two things, and Jerry and Richard are going to do the bulk of this, but I wanted to just introduce it. There's two types of incidents that occur. There's one in which the police may be present, okay, for that incident. Most of the complaints we hear are after the fact incidences. We're hearing of somebody who was not cleaning or they were renting when they weren't supposed to, and they are after the fact. Those launch an investigation. And so Richard was going to take a minute and talk about first, what are the penalties associated with violation of this order? And then Jerry was going to talk a little bit about enforcement, manpower, how you do an investigation, and especially what is the information that they have to have in order to do an investigation. And then The other part that Richard and I wanted to talk about is that we know you counselors are going to get calls. There's no way that is not going to happen. And there are some things that you should do and some things that you should not do. And Richard and I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about that. So Richard, if you'll talk a little bit about the penalties associated with this.
Okay, pretty much the penalties are for violation of the governor's orders or any of the many orders that followed, that can be cited as a Class C misdemeanor. Of course, the chief had sent around the enforcement policy having to do with first using the opportunity to, the contact to educate before you rush to citation for, and with a Class C misdemeanor, that is something you could, it's not a mandatory arrest statute, so you could give someone a citation, a piece of ticket basically in lieu of taking them down to the jail. So the police have that mechanism available if their educational efforts fail and people keep repeating. And I did send you all the statutes. I think Ron may have sent them to you last time. Yeah, so that was, I can't find it. That's the 401-990 section for violation of the orders. The second enforcement mechanism has to do with the Oregon Health Authority requirements, and that of course does not involve us. The Oregon Health Authority has the ability under 431A010 to investigate and issue notices of violation of public health laws, which are civil administrative penalty process with, of course, rights to appeal. The only role for us there is to, I think it tells us that the police can assist to the extent resources are available when the Oregon Health Authority and the local public health administrators need assistance for compliance. Then we have what is essentially our code, and I think I sent this around when this first came out, under Chapter 27300, our code makes it a Class A, and I think you only have 2 Class A violations in your code. This is one of them. That's a maximum fine of $2,000 per offense. And it's subject to citation to the municipal court under 116, Chapter 116 of the code. So that's any violation of an emergency regulation, measure, or order taken by the city council or designee. That includes Ron or any of his orders. Each day is a separate offense. So the question is, if we have a violation of the county order, what is that? Well, by my recollection, the council ratified and approved the county order. Now, to me, that means that any violation of the terms of that county order is a violation of the city's ratification or approval of that order and is enforceable under 272-300 as a Class A violation. Because I know people will probably argue with that, I think Ron could write, and I'll write an order for Ron's signature that simply states that to clarify any violation of the provisions of the county order, and I can put the numbers in there, ratified and accepted by the city council, shall be enforced as provided in LCMC 272-300, specifically violations or Class A violations that may be cited to municipal court. So if right now we have a park closure and someone goes into the park, even though it's closed, the officer can cite for a Class A and say, hey, you violated one of the emergency orders of the city council or their designee, the manager. and here's your citation, and they put the scheduled bail presumptive fine amount on there of $440, and tell them it's a maximum fine of $200, a minimum fine of $225, and they get a citation. It's not a criminal offense. We go away. I think the same would be true if there's a clear violation of the county order. But you're not going to have a police officer sitting outside of a hotel watching to see how long they leave the room vacant. Is it going to be 24 hours? You more likely will get a report of that. So normally violations can be cited if they are witnessed by a police officer. Our code actually allows that for a city ordinance violation, if the officer has probable cause, that is based on the totality of the circumstances, he believes it's not that the offense has occurred and that this person has committed it, then the officer can issue the citation without personally witnessing it. So we can investigate violations of the county order, but again, it can't be, I heard they're not waiting 24 hours. We'd actually have to have identifiable witnesses, maybe interviews and admissions always work. So it's not as easy as it sounds, but the tools are there.
Jerry?
Yeah, so kind of like the VRD thing, it's a challenging thing. We obviously have nowhere near the manpower to do sweeps or, as Richard say, monitor these in person. My anticipation is that if we get us or code enforcement involved in investigating these things, it will be complaint driven. Our direction from Oregon DOJ is to approach these initially as a educational opportunity, look into them, try to gain voluntary compliance, and basically put them on notice that we are watching and we will follow up on complaints. The next direction from there is that if we find something that we feel is significant enough that needs to be reported, that we would generate a detailed report that would go to OSHA, and OSHA will follow that up appropriately. We could also furnish that report, and we would at least furnish the CAD like we have been doing to Weston and planning. And I don't know if there's any provisions in the city for sanctions through their business licensing or other things that could be held over their head if they fail to comply with those. That would be up to City Hall to decide that. And then we have these, if we get something super egregious where we get something very confrontational, we have these other options that we can go to, whether it's citing under the governor's order, under the county's order, or our city stuff, and keeping going through the violation process that Richard just described. I would be very surprised if we get there. But again, as well as alluded to a little earlier, the challenge from a law enforcement perspective, even to establish probable cause, is that we have to have a date, a time, a location. In this case, if it's in a motel or a VRD management group, which room. We have to find our way to have access to those rental logs, see when people checked in, checked out, and then hopefully have a witness that's willing to step up and say, this is how I know this didn't meet the 24-hour qualifications, which generally means we have to talk to somebody that physically observed that. And then when it comes time, if we get to the point where we have to cite, well, now we have to decide who gets the citation. Is it the corporation that owns the business? Is it the manager that owns the business? If it's a VRD, is it the management company? Is it the owner of the VRD? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this as to, okay, who is actually responsible for this violation. And so hopefully, it won't come to that. That if we have these complaints come in and we go looking into them and the company becomes aware that we're paying attention to it and they're about to be reported to OSHA and City Hall, that they will step it up and they will comply. But I guess that's the global picture from my perspective. And, you know, I will just remind everybody, as we have opened up, our calls for service over and above the closure type things has ramped very quickly back up to normal, maybe even a little bit above normal. We had a significant amount of calls for service, I would say off the charts when Chinook Winds opened last weekend. We had 12 or 19 calls for service at the casino in the space of about 24 hours. All of it involved alcohol. One rollover crash on Rhodes End, and even Grand Ron picked up 2 DUIs that were eastbound that we didn't catch up to before they got out of town, that were DUIs out of Chinook Winds. Plus our normal domestics and things like that have ramped up. So I guess I'm just making that point is that our manpower is running, but you know, we will continue to do our best to follow up on these complaints as they come in, but we will not have the manpower to be proactively checking these facilities ahead of time.
Mr. Apicella, you have a follow-up?
Well, I just wanted to maybe jump ahead here to maybe Ron was going to address this, but these are violations, and while the police officers, sworn officers, can deal with these, they usually are designated to city enforcement officers, which is a defined term in our code. It's certain designated individuals are allowed to issue citation. Probably with regard to VRDs, it's usually the VRD enforcement person. It can be code enforcement officer, but it can be myself or Ron or any designated city employee. But who is not listed there as city councilors are not listed as enforcement officers. So it's important that when you are contacted by a citizen, that they believe that there is a violation, that what you do as the city councilor with no individual authority is to direct them to the correct person to report it to. The less contact you have, the better, because any involvement you may have will be used against us. It'll be you are trying to make the violation go away, or you're trying to get this person in trouble because you're friends with a competitor. There'll be every stupid allegation you've heard of, you've never heard of, will just come out of that. So primarily when you hear about an enforcement case, you need to tell them, you need to submit that to the code enforcement officer, here's the number. Or you need to give that to the VRD compliance officer, here's the number. I have no individual authority. I can't force the enforcement officers to put your complaint at the top of the stack or move it to the bottom. All I can do is direct you to the right person. Because if you don't do that, we'll just hear about it later. This person is, this counselor doesn't like this person. That's why you're hearing this. That we have enough to deal with it without having to run that kind of stuff down. And one last thing is that if you are a citizen and you believe that you don't want to make the complaint because you think they'll find out who you are and then they'll come after you, or set up a website and in your name, you can under the public records law submit a complaint in confidence. Not anonymous, it's in confidence. You've submitted your name, but we will keep it protected. So you are a credible source. Now we can decide to leave you out of the prosecution, and we may get demands for who is this person or whatever. But if we don't use you, if we don't intend to call you to trial, and we develop the case outside of that, I think we can protect you. There's always public records law, and they can always attempt to say that we have to disclose it in the public interest. But we have had people come in and submit complaints in confidence, and we've kept their names out of it. We've just gone on and used the information to develop a case without that.
Ron, you had something there?
No. Well, yes, I guess I could add just one other thing. So since we shifted over into the role of the council, one thing that will really be helpful, and the chief can send you this information as to what information we actually need to be able to move forward. Richard just talked a little bit about that. That's some information. That's something you can give to anybody you get a complaint. Please send this off to me, to the chief, to Richard, to somebody, but you have to include this information so we can go forward. And so we can get Jerry to send you that information so that you can pass that along.
Mm-hmm. Riley, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I would like to see all those bullet points that the chief, so thank you for stating about that, but about what we as counselors should do. I'd like to speak about what Chief was saying about what is needed. And I think what is needed from an individual willing to call should be explicitly stated. Look, if you're willing to call this number, here are the next 5 things that if this goes forward, we need you to understand that this is going to be a part of it. And have it be clear of like what the city needs, what the chief needs in order to go forward. And that way it's known. It's just on that sheet and it's out there on the infographic and all that stuff. Like, yes, calling is the first step, but there's 4 more after that are as important as the first one. And we want you to know that this is what you're going to be doing as soon as you make the commitment to make a phone call. And that way you're empowering the people when they call, they know what's expected, they know what's going to come after. And we don't have to say 500 times, and also these 4 steps. So,
Deanna.
I just wanted to say too that just for the general public out there, people who do make complaints, and this is about VRDs, that they are to call the non-emergency police number. That's what we put into place, and so they aren't. I mean, they're listening to us now, perhaps, but so they don't get confused that they're calling Ron or calling the chief or calling Apicello or or calling Weston or Craig. That actually, if it's about VRD complaints, they need to follow the path that we put forward for them, and that's to use the non-emergency number.
Good point. Diane.
Yeah, working on that. I know on the website we have like a feedback form, but if you could have the form that says, because I think what we're going to get is more VRD complaints because neighbors watch. Hotels are going to be very hard to know if they're doing the 24 hours, but anybody who has a VRD in their neighborhood, those people that live there full time know that. But if you could put that form on the website that says, here's everything you need, plus your name to follow up with it, it'll make it much easier, and they can just fill it out and then call the code enforcement. I think that's where the problem came is, for me, is I kept saying, well, you need to contact the non-emergency code enforcement, call them. And they'd get, well, we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything. Well, okay, if we need your time, date, who it is, if you know the cleaning person that gave you that information, if you can get their names, if you have all that on the website, that's all we have to do is say, please go to the website, get the form, and take care of it. Then we're out of it.
Good. Judy.
Yeah, you just mentioned about following up to Deanna's non-emergency number. You mentioned calling the code enforcement officer or the VRD compliance officer. Are they 2 different people?
Yes.
Okay. And,
one works out of planning, the other works out of police.
Okay. And so the same non-emergency number is applicable?
Well, I think you can always call the police non-emergency number and say, I've got a complaint about a vacation rental, or let's say it's about a hotel. With Chapter 272 emergency order. And again, that's not a VRD specific regulation. That's a regulation for this emergency, the COVID-19 emergency. So I think, yeah, you can call the police non-emergency number, or you can call any other enforcement officer. If it's a hotel, the VRD compliance guy isn't to call.
But I think, Judy, your point is too many numbers, too many people out there. The key focal point is the non-emergency number for dispatch, and they'll sort it to the direction.
Right, and that brings me to my next question. Suppose the dispatch person gets inundated with all these calls. Is there going to be enough staff to handle these calls, or politely inform people as to what's going to be happening because they called?
Right.
I don't want to overwhelm everybody with this one
Yep.
number.
I think Jerry's got an opinion, Chief.
Yes, I'll just reiterate that. I mean, we actually, have a system in place to work with Weston and planning on specifically on VRD complaints, and then all of those should be coming to our 994-3636 non-emergency line. We have a process in place for obtaining that information. If it warrants police to go out and take a look at that, or if it goes to Craig at Code Enforcement, we do those things, and then that information in one form or another always ends up over on Weston's desk so that he can look at these things and determine if he has follow-up enforcement to do to deal with the permitting and licensing and reining management teams in. Whether or not it will escalate under these rules or not it remains to be seen. And whether I'm not anticipating we're going to have a huge influx of calls on the hotels, but this is all new ground. We won't know until we know. If it becomes untenable, we'll either bring in additional personnel to deal with the calls, or we will work with Weston and planning to figure out a way to share the burden. But I'm not really worried about that at this point. I just want to reiterate that I think for now, you only need to give them the one number, regardless of which kind of complaint it is, hotel or VRD. It can come to the PD. We'll sort it. We will get it assigned to the appropriate person to take a look into it if it warrants that, and we will make sure that planning gets their information, and if we need to push information out to OSHA based on our investigations, we will do that.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Rick, you've had your hand up.
This is really helpful, this discussion, and being able to focus on just the one non-emergency number, I think would be great. So I'm not really confused, but we're talking about this in the context of the cleaning provisions at the hotels. Or I have a feeling we're going to have this exact same discussion in a few minutes when it comes to masks in general, relating to maybe what's happening at the stores and Safeway. So it sounds like the same number is going to apply. The more specific question I had was the casino. If we hear someone sends us a complaint about something on tribal territory, what do we do with that?
Jerry?
The casino is a tribal nation on sovereign property. They have their own rules that they go by. My understanding is the only enforcement entity that holds any hammer over the nations is possibly the FBI, but they work by their own rules and guidelines. Now, we have been in touch with Eric DeMello and the crew up at Chinook Winds, and I think that they've been working hard to try to adhere to the state and county recommendations as far as operations. How that went for them on this last weekend, I don't know. It certainly looked from the outside that they got a lot more business than they expected to contend with, and I'm not exactly sure how that went, but certainly overservice of alcohol wasn't well controlled that weekend. But if people have an issue with how the casino is handling that, then they need to reach out to the tribe or the casino consumer affairs at the casino. That won't fall on the city or law enforcement here in town.
Could we get a phone number for that as well?
I will try to find out who's the best contact for you is.
Okay.
OLCC still regulates their alcohol, but I mean, OLCC, they still abide by OLCC landings. I mean, if people are finding that they aren't serving to the standards, I mean, that's still a call based on the bartender's OLCC standards and practices. So there's that.
All right. So can we move on then to the overall discussion, I think, out of lodging and into, masks in general and the business community and the community at large? Ron?
Yes. So the question that we've had, or the desire that people have had, is to make the wearing of masks mandatory. Now, Ken is probably our closest resident expert on what the CDC and OHA are requiring or recommending. So, Ken, will you speak a little bit to what the state and the feds are talking about as far as masks?
Okay, you bet, Ron. So all of the guidance, almost literally from day one, from the Centers for Disease Control, have only recommended the wearing of masks. Obviously, they try and put strong words with it, but you still do not see what I would call the more legal words like you will or you shall or you must. So that's just been recommendations from the CDC. So the state of Oregon, the governor, I went through everything again yesterday. There was only one piece that she used the word must. Everything else is recommended or encouraging to wear masks, with the exception of the guidance documents that the governor and Oregon Health Authority issued out to different business sectors in the state of Oregon. And in those, and I can get a more detailed list, most of those stated that these businesses must comply with wearing of the mask of their employees, and it left it somewhat open-ended as far as visitors to the business, a patron to the business. It was up to their choice if they wanted to make it a requirement for patrons to have masks. Along with that type of verbiage comes that if they do that, they post it, they have to have a policy, to properly inform a customer, the requirements. And so generally speaking, I would tell you that in most cases, everything is still encouraged and recommended, other than specific things like the county order that says BRDs, hotels, motels must wear masks, et cetera, et cetera. So really, it's up to the business to make a choice, except for maybe their own employees.
All right. Thank you. Again, questions? I lost my ability to see hands. So if somebody's got a question, yeah, Diane?
Oh. So what can we do as a city what I'm hearing is, like you said, it's recommended. So if a store wants to say anybody coming in must wear a mask, do they have the right to do like no shirt, no service, no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service? There you go. So can they legally do that and keep someone out of their store if they don't have a mask on? Because New York just put in a executive order saying that retailers have that right. Can legally you tell me what that is?
Yeah, well, I'm sure Ken was going to take this or the chief, but yes, they do have a policy, and I believe Ken mentioned that, that's in the, one of the requirements is they have to have a policy. But if they have a policy, and I think we're encouraging them to have that kind of policy. And by the way, I think your sign, Ms. Hinton, needs to also say no pants, no service. Just
No pants.
well, I don't know why pants gets left off that list. I don't understand.
So Ed is, so as part of all of this discussion that we've been having as staff, it's been to beef up our education program, to go farther than we have been going, including this very thing of encouraging the businesses to adopt it. Many of them already have adopted this, but to encourage it, and for the cost of a couple of reams of paper, Ed's already put together Deanna's sign, has a little more color to it, Counselor, and to start getting those out to the businesses as part of our education campaign.
I might remind us all that Chinook Winds took that initiative right out of the chute as they were opening up their operations. And it was interesting. They informed their large body of patrons that they were going to do a number of new criteria, one of them non-smoking, but also wearing of masks by patrons. And it was interesting that they thought the non-smoking component was going to be the biggest kickback, arguments, complaints, but it was actually masks, the wearing of masks. But they have held to it and have dealt with it inside their facilities. Certainly there are exceptions with medical, but Diane, to answer your question, as it's done, you bet a business can require that. So, and I apologize because I can't see a hand.
Councilor Hinton had a question,
Okay.
a comment, a raised hand.
Yep. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, thank you. I just think, I don't even know where to start. I think if we can, we should make it mandatory. I understand, and I really appreciate the education going out there to help businesses make that requirement. And I think that's great. And if that works, then I'll be quiet. Otherwise, I worry about our residents, because we have, as a county, been very good about keeping our distance, wearing masks. You go into the grocery store and most people are wearing them. But I also witnessed, as we had more people coming in, that along Highway 101, when people were going in and out of businesses, there was no social distancing on the sidewalks even, and no mask wearing. And I don't know how that protects the businesses and the employees and the owners of those businesses. And that, again, is my concern, is our residents. And, we're taking good care of ourselves, and we're respecting each other and being kind to one another by wearing our masks. And I just don't see that with all the visitors. And we, June 1st is just Monday, and that's when we will be seeing a lot more people here. And I'm not sure that they have the same respect for us that we do for our neighbors and other residents. So I'm all for mandatory or whatever support we can give to the businesses, because we are a tourist industry. We do want those folks coming here and bringing their money with them, for sure. That's how we can get by. But without people being safe and healthy to serve all those folks and all of our variety of businesses, including the lodging industry and our grocery stores, I I don't know how we can maintain that low number of cases unless we protect them.
Ron,
Rick, Councilor Mark, and then Councilor Hoagland both have their hands up.
I would back, if it's possible for the city to make it mandatory, I would support that. And I think that would give us the power to have stores, again, goes to that sign thing. If you're coming into Safeway, you're expected to wear a mask. We could do electronic signs on the entries on the highways coming into the city. This is a mask wearing community. Please help keep our people safe, that sort of thing. And I think if we send that sort of signal to visitors as they arrive, it would make it much easier for the stores to actually enforce that. Now, I don't know. Mr. Apicella looks like he's pondering, so we're gonna find out if that's possible or not. Or maybe it wouldn't be a mandatory an ordinance as such, but I think if we did the signage and send that signal, I think it would be helpful.
Well, and I hear you. I was going to ask Deanna if she had any further ideas, because I could see Chief Palmer, just cringing. The whole enforcement issue has got to be mind-boggling. So, I'm a big fan of informing, but I have a little bit of trouble with coming up with ordinances and demands that you're not able to enforce, and quite frankly, we know we can't enforce it. So, your thoughts, Deanna?
Thank you. As Diane mentioned, there are other states and cities that have mandatory mask enforcement of one way or another. I think there are 7 different states that do so. We wouldn't be out of the norm, but
7 out of 50?
Well, small norm. And I wouldn't be surprised if those were the states and cities. There's Connecticut, and Hawaii, and Maryland, and New York, and Pennsylvania, and another one. But I like the idea of the education. I would like, if we had an ordinance, I would like the idea of adding to, providing something that the businesses could put up on their walls so they could point to it. If they say our policy is, and they have a policy, I hope, but anyway, if they have a policy to ask or to tell people that they have to wear a mask when they come into their store, unless they have a medical exception or a person 2 and under, that's the general for these other mandatory places. 2 years old and younger don't have masks because they don't know how to deal with them. But then it would be supportive to the businesses. I'm not saying that I want the chief to walk up and down the highway and start handing out tickets to people who aren't wearing masks. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying to support our citizens, the people who are most vulnerable to a virus coming into our county. And so they could even point to something on the wall that says ordinance such and such, it's mandatory, which would relieve some of the pressure of some of the people coming into their stores who don't want to comply. I think it would be helpful, plus education. And I don't see that many tickets. I don't think that would be the motivator, but if a business owner wanted someone to leave their business, they should be able to do that and have the support of us. And would be to point to the wall that, to point to the ordinance that says that everyone must wear a mask. And that would be in public places too. Like I witnessed this weekend, the people, visitors on Highway 101 walking past each other and just barely touching to come in and out of businesses. There wasn't the social distancing, so there should have been a mask. And, I don't need to remind us, those over 60, that a third of our population is in that vulnerable category.
Mr. Apicella.
Okay, I think it's absolutely clear that a property owner has the right to decide. I'm a business owner. I can put up a sign if I have a policy that says no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. And if you fail to comply, because you're like, oh, my rights are being infringed, tough, because that property owner has rights too, and that business owner gets to say that you're not coming in without a mask and endangering my other patrons. That's pretty clear. So when the city talks about requiring masks, I think we ought to talk about our property. When people come into our properties, our facilities, maybe we need to decide, are we going to have a policy? Are we going to require masks when you come into City Hall, the community center, of the patrons that frequent that? Just because that's the position where we are strongest, we are the property owner, and we're going to mandate that those for the protection of our other patrons, we have rules. That's what the rules are about. You got to wear this mask. But in the situation that Councilor Hinton described, well, there's a city ordinance that says everyone has to wear a mask in a business. We're now inserting ourselves in between that very clear, defensible right of the property owner versus the citizen. And by doing that, we make ourselves a target. So I'm not sure that the benefit is there. It may be easier for the business owner to say, well, I have no choice, I have to wear a mask. It's a city ordinance. But that just, again, puts all the ire on us. When it comes to our facilities, I think absolutely, because I had the question asked, well, if I go to City Hall or if I go to the municipal court and the employees there or the judge isn't wearing a mask, how do you justify that when you have to go other places and people are wearing masks? And you exposed me to all these other patrons of the court that weren't wearing masks, and now I'm sick, I'm going to sue. So it's a liability issue. When it's our facility, I think for the protection of our patrons, we should do that. But I don't know that we should insert ourselves between the property owner and the public when it comes to private businesses.
Thank you. Anne Marie? Oh, okay. I see your hand up. Riley?
So what is it exactly that states business owners have the right to do the no shirt, no signs, what is that exactly? Whatever that is. Is that an ordinance? Is that just a property owner rights thing? You're muted, Richard.
One of the fundamental rights you have in owning property is the right to exclude people. So I think you can exclude people from your business if they're not appropriately.
Great. So in that piece of paper that Ed has printed on 2 reams of paper for all the businesses, can we put on there according to the rights of something so that they, because business owners don't want to be the bad guy. They can point to say, oh, this is, no, not on us. Not on us. Like, this is my right in order to do that. And it is here on this piece of paper. And it's not a city ordinance, but it's empowering them as they are as such a business. I have been hearing, we can't over and over and over again. And for me, that's overwhelming. Like, I'm not a can't person, and we can't enforce, and we can't change the thing, and we can't do this. Okay, great. Fine. What can we do? Can we print that on a piece of paper? Can we say, hey, here it is, and here's the thing. Like, we require that.
You could say, it's my right as a property owner and business owner to require that if you don't have a mask,
right.
I reserve the right not to allow you to have service. We couldn't pass an ordinance to require masks. It's just that in the 7 states that I'm aware of, and it's just that the COVID numbers are way different than they are here. Mm-hmm. So we like to pass laws based upon substantial competent evidence of risk, and we'd want to have the health department behind us if we were going to require it, and we'd want to be with the county and be doing this on a countywide basis. Right. So that's the reasons, not that we can do it. I think we can try to make the case, but our adequate factual base is not as good
Right. And then we as residents can see what businesses have those no shirt, no sign, no shoes, no mask businesses, and then just not go. We can rest assured that we, the city, have gone to all the businesses and saying, here's this infographic that we have produced in accordance with everything that we feel that we can. Would you like to put it on your front door to protect or to ensure or to whatever? And then we, as residents, not as tourists, can say, oh, I'm not going to go there because I know there might be people there without masks. And that might be Safeway. And I might have to go at 10 o'clock at night when all the tourists aren't there. So we, as residents, have the opportunity to shift how we interact with our local businesses according to our own safety, our own self, instead of saying, well, these stupid tourists and all these other things. I'm done. I mean, I'm to the max of blaming tourists for everything. I understand all of the other stuff. I want to show what we can do, how we can do it, and welcome them in the most fullest sense of welcome back. And here are some things that are a little bit different for us now.
Okay. Deanna?
I just wanted to say again that we know that the COVID-19 is transmitted by air, like when you're speaking, you're losing some of your spittle or whatever, even though you can't see it. We all know that. And so mask wearing is one of the ways in which we can provide some level of protection for ourselves and for others. And I just wanted to say I see that more often than not. And I'd also like to remind us that we as a county are doing a very good job. And we are a tourist industry, I'm saying it again, and we are inviting people here from those very counties who are having difficulty with their COVID numbers. And so it isn't just us. We need to have a level of protection for those visitors and from those visitors, quite frankly. So I don't agree that we just look at our numbers and that's how our phasing has been done. That's how we're checking ourselves to make sure that we're doing a good job or not a good job. But I maintain that we have to have an eye on those other areas where we are drawing people to visit from. And those numbers aren't good. I've been tracking them. They are not good.
Okay. So we've heard you numerous times. Thank you. Mr. Apicciolo, you're still you're unmuted. Did you want to wrap up or?
No, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. So, from here, suggestions, thoughts, you know, on the table is certainly education and expanding education. I think the county, remind us, the county has a Keep Lincoln County Open campaign, which hits all the elements that we know of to stay healthy and clean. And emphasize on that certainly would continue to help. Mr. Mark, you're muted.
I guess maybe that's kind of what I had in mind, but some sort of, if the mandatory thing is not practical, I understand that, that's fine. But I would still somehow encourage businesses to put up signs. And I mean, there are some stores around town that I think are really being proactive that I've seen in terms of limiting the numbers of people in their stores and that sort of thing. And for the most part, I am seeing compliance. And I think if we just some sort of signage, and I still like the electronic sign idea, to just say this, we're asking people to, if you're coming to Lincoln City, bring your masks and expect to wear them. But it wouldn't have to be a law, but we could just, there's some sort of language I think we could reach that would accomplish that.
And I think, you know, we need to remind ourselves that we can make choices as citizens. One, not go out, or when you go out, wear a mask, because at least one mask is better than none at all. So, you know, that helps and shows others that masks are in style, so to speak. So, we all have choices to protect ourselves. Judy?
Yeah, I like Rick's idea about the signage coming into town. And I think our visitors need to realize they're not self-sufficient. I mean, they rely on our workforce here. And if the businesses want to put up a sign with no shirt, no shoes, no mask, can they do that? Could the city have it printed and available if businesses so would like to have it? Is that an option?
Yes, that was said earlier. I think, Ron, isn't Ed putting those out and color and, available?
He has it all put together and ready to go, and was just waiting for this meeting to end.
There you go, Judy. Okay, so I'm all in favor of what we've talked about for all these, upping the education, giving clarification where needed, and, moving on. And there's nothing to preclude you as individuals to politely sharing your observation of what no mask, if you are so inclined. So can we, be done with that conversation and move on? Deanna?
Ed, do you want to show us your draft of your
Ron
sign?
might be able to do that. I can't share screen from where I'm at.
I can show you from my phone. You want to see it?
The one I just sent you isn't our recommendation, but there's some wording at the bottom I thought you might find interesting.
Okay.
Okay, so Ron, the other item, could you update us then on economic aid for businesses?
Yes, and I'm going to have Ed help me just fill in a few blanks. Following our last meeting, we went through and audited all of the applicants that had qualified, and found that there were some inaccuracies in their application, or not in their application, but in their occupational tax permit. And so Ed's staff has been working, as we normally do when we run into these things, to help them. They are mostly just honest mistakes and inaccuracies. There's nothing that was really blatant that came about with those. So Liz Francis has been, we've now shifted from that to the development and the implementation of the contracts. And so before any of the funds are distributed to any business, they'll have to sign a contract. We're going to be doing that through DocuSign, so that it lessens the time of us having to try to go meet with people and everything else. And we are going forward with that at this time. Ed, any updates you want to give?
Yeah, Liz is sending out all the notices that people have gotten funding. We're holding back on, I believe it's 17 of them while we iron out some hiccups and glitches. But everybody else is getting their notice that, yes, you have funding on the way. Liz is also sending out the I'm sorry that you did not get funding to the handful of non-lodging properties that won't be getting funding. And, excuse me, as soon as I get off from this phone call, it's my job to send out emails to all the non-lodging properties that will not be getting funded.
And can you send out a revised list to the council then?
Yes.
Someone? That would be great. All right.
There was
Ron, go ahead.
There was discussion earlier about getting together a press release. We've done that. And we have quotes from one of the recipients. We have a quote from Judy Casper. We've got everything positioned the way we wanted to do, but we did not want to send it out until we were pulling the trigger on the actual contracts and awards and whatnot. We'll be moving forward with that shortly too.
Great. And Ron, could you maybe update us on this Business Oregon application that and funding, how that is going to be used?
Yes, we've joined with a group that has applied as part of the state funding. We've applied for $100,000 of that, and that would be using as part of our would go towards to beef up what we're already doing as far as the economic assistance. There are some qualifying factors that we don't have in our current requirements, specifically that they could not have been a recipient of the CARES or have received the CARES funding. So we would then go through, and any of those recipients, we would have further questions to see if they qualify for that funding as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, there is one other application that we have put in for funding. Ken, will you address this?
Okay, yes, I will. I think the city council, if not all, there were 2 letters. One came out from the Association of Oregon Counties. The other one came out from the League of Oregon Cities. And the CARE Act gave out money to each state and some counties and major metropolitan cities. And so Governor Brown took a portion of the money the state of Oregon received and put out the opportunity to get reimbursed 100% federal dollars, no match required, in quite a few different areas, primarily medical expenses, public health expenses, payroll expenses for employees dedicated to COVID-19, expenses to facilitate compliance with COVID-19 measures, and then, of course, an other category. And so we have gone through with the finance department, and this was for a time period of March 1st through May 15th. And we have gone through our employee timesheets and things like that and our purchases for that time period. And we are going to submit today for that. And Ron, I didn't have the figures currently with me, but I know that we're going to submit for the $50,000 that we did with the nonprofits. I think there's also, and I can get you an exact figure here, well over $80,000 in employee salaries for that time period. And then on the next round that's coming out, we will go for trying to get reimbursed for the money that the city is using for this economic relief. We haven't spent the money yet, so we didn't want to apply quite yet for it, but on the next round. So we're hopeful. I think the most important piece to me is it's 100% federal money. If we were to go through FEMA, my old alma mater, we would only get 75% reimbursement. So I am hopeful that we will get this, and we're Debbie in the finance department and everybody is working through this, making sure we have an audit trail, because I'm sure that this is all very auditable somewhere down the road, and hopefully we will get reimbursed.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Judy, you had a question?
Yeah, are we at the part where I can inject another idea?
Well, if you can do it in less than 15 minutes, because we're out of here at noon.
Yeah, just, I had a ongoing question about, we talked about parking permits for local residents, and now summer's coming upon us. And there was mention like they do in college campuses. Is there still something we can put online for residents to get street parking where it's not available?
Yeah, I'm afraid I let that ball drop a little bit, Counselor, so let me get with Richard and we'll move forward with it.
Okay. That was my 2 cents. Thank you.
All right. Oh, there you go. Ken's got a sign for you. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Love it.
Okay. With that, we've got. Okay, Deanna.
I just a real quick. I just wanted to say a real quick personal note to Mrs. Chief. I see your elbow. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. All right. Okay, with that, see you on June 8th for our next council meeting. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.